My brother framed me of RP 8 years ago, but the truth has finally been revealed. I apologized to my brother's ex-wife on his behalf about how his feelings for my wife had interfered with their relationship. I decided to confront my brother in front of my family and asked him why he is destroying his life because of his obsession with my wife. He was blindsided with that question and denied everything. We had a massive argument that basically ended with me forgiving my brother and telling him that he is no longer welcome in my house. Both my parents and Jenny talked to me and convinced me that no matter what, he was still family, so for everyone's sake, I decided to be amicable. It was then that it felt like he was genuinely working on himself, and we went on with our lives. Fast forward to 2015, I can still recall the day vividly. It was the 25th July, and I was running multiple errands. My wife took both our kids to see their grandparents. It was sometime after lunch that I got a call from my father, telling me to come to their home with a lot of anger in his tone. As soon as I entered, I noticed a lot of tension in the air. My wife was a crying mess, and my parents were trying to console her. Some of my extended family members were there as well. I asked what happened, only to be hit by being called a R-pissed by my parents. I was shocked and confused. They claimed that at a party I went to a couple of weeks back, I rapped a girl, and then texted her to not tell anyone about it. Otherwise, there will be consequences. I had known this girl Amanda for some time. We went to high school together, and she was a part of the larger friend group that I occasionally hung out with. According to her, after the party, which was at a club, I followed her to her car and did it there. She shared screenshots of the alleged conversation with my wife and told her this entire tale. My father slapped me hard, and my parents told me that they never want to see my face again. Jenny was angry, and she said that we're done. I tried to convince all of them that I never did that, but fell on deaf ears. I was basically kicked out from their house and told that neither Jenny nor the kids would be returning, and my father would be coming over to take their stuff from my apartment. When my father came, I begged and pleaded, but he basically packed a couple of bags and told me never ever to contact them again, and that he would personally hand me to the cops if that happened. By evening, Henry had shared the screenshots and all the details to our extended family group on WhatsApp, from where I was unanimously kicked out. The next few days, I even had people from my friend group calling me to say they were disgusted with me and never to contact them again. I was a mess during that time. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't even properly work. My boss also heard the rumors going around, but couldn't do much until he saw some police action against me. He advised me that I leave the organization on my own to keep my record intact, and that he would ensure that I don't have to even serve my notice period. I tried to argue the case, but he told me that if the cops come knocking on my door, he would be kicked out anyways, and in such a scenario, and the gravity of the case meant I won't get severance and my record will be tarnished. I grudgingly agreed to his ask, and I left the organization in the next few days. In mid-August, while I was still wallowing in my misery, I received 2 documents from the court. One was a letter of disownment, and the other were divorce papers. I was quite intoxicated, but I went to my parents' place anyway, only for my brother to come and lay hands on me and tell me that I was a disgrace to the family, and it was good that I was disowned. I had blood coming out of my face by the time he was done with me, and barely able to stand. My parents and my wife looked at me from afar, but did nothing. I managed to get myself up after some time, a crying mess, and realized that I had lost everything and everyone I knew. I stayed holed up in my apartment for the duration of the divorce. It went as amicably as it could. As I was jobless, plus my now ex-parents stated they would pay for the child, I didn't have to pay child support or any alimony. By January 2016, I was divorced, and trying to pick up the pieces that was once my life was hard. During this time, I also felt like confronting Amanda. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it could have made matters worse for me. Due to the women-centric laws in my country, meant one phone call, and I would be looking at 5 to 6 years in jail. In February 2016, I got into a major accident and spent a good part of 5 weeks in recovery. The staff told me that they contacted my emergency number, which was still Jenny at that point, and she hung up and no one showed. Once I recovered, I realized that I had spent a good part of my savings, and I needed to get back on my feet, if not for anything else, to have a roof over my head. However, I realized that I won't be able to do anything in the place I was at. So I sold all my furniture, paid my remaining dues for the rented accommodation, and decided to start from scratch in a different place. I moved to a city 2 hours away and tried to get a job for some time, but to no avail. I also used to drink myself silly, and thoughts of offing myself were recurring. Waking up after seeing a nightmare to a cold sweat almost became a norm. For 4 months, this went by, after which I ran into an old acquaintance, James, from college. We greeted each other and talked about our lives for a bit. I told him I was in the city looking for a job. He told me he had just quit and was planning on setting up a management consulting firm of his own. He then invited me to a drink later on, where after a lot of talking about our professional lives, he offered me an opportunity to work with him, as he needed a couple of people who knew their stuff. At this point, I thought I needed to work my butt off to get my mind off these thoughts. So I agreed, but I told him I wanted to meet him and his team and talk to them before we moved forward. 2 days later, he introduced me to another guy, Derek, and told me that currently it will be just the 3 of us going forward. I shook hands with Derek and told them that before they proceeded further, I had something to say. I then proceeded to spill the beans on everything that had happened to me during that time. time and how I was disowned and divorced because of it, with the tears coming through in between. James and Derek told me that they felt sorry for me, but also told me that if there was no criminal record on my person, then there would be no issue. I stated that police never came to my house, and they were relieved. James did mention that to be on the safer side, he's going to ask someone to run a full background check, and I understood his position and agreed. During this time, I was living in a rundown place that I rented to minimize my expenses. I waited patiently for 2 weeks, but was still looking for jobs in other places in case things didn't work out. 2 weeks later, James called me and we met up later that day. He stated my record is clean of any RP and welcomed me to the team. After that, I threw myself to my work and started therapy sessions. On the advice of Derek, I also joined a gym and vented a lot of my frustration on the punching bag. Derek and I became gym bros, and I basically looked at him as an older brother as he was, essentially, my older brother Henry's age. By the end of 2018, I had a good amount of control back in my life, the consulting firm took off, and the money rolled in. I rented out a nice apartment in a decent neighborhood. The Band-Aid also came off to an extent, and I realized I needed to do some necessary steps to move on. I went to a courthouse and changed my last name officially on record. I adopted the last name of Derek after his parents. They saw me as a nice guy and involved me in a lot of their family functions, including me being the best man for Derek's wedding, so this was a way of thanking them as well. I tried dating a bit, but it never worked out for me due to my emotional issues. Till I started dating Kim in 2019, she was half Korean and half Italian. I met her at a coffee place where I picked up my coffee and on occasion sat there. She used to work behind the counter. We saw each other only for the order, but once when Derek and I were there and he noticed that she was constantly looking at me, he told me that I should ask her out. I approached a bit hesitant and asked her out for drinks later that day. We had a nice date and she said that she hoped we could see each other again. On my second date with her, I told her my background and to my surprise, she understood and wanted to keep seeing me. At this point, I was skeptical and even cried a bit because I couldn't believe that I could even find a bit of normalcy restored in my life. We went out for a few dates and really enjoyed each other's company, and it felt that I was finally able to start healing. I went on my first vacation after years with her to Europe and had a great time overall. When 2020 came around, we remained in contact throughout over the phone and FaceTime. When things regained some level of normalcy in the latter half, she asked if she could move in with me and I agreed. She was let go from her coffee shop and was trying her luck with job hunting. She was an amazing cook, and that's when I suggested that maybe she can try and set up a place and get into the food business. By mid-2021, and with the financial backing of her parents, she had a cloud kitchen set up which basically delivered food to the nearby areas. Both our lives were doing great. I still had a lot of emotional issues though. I no longer had thoughts of offing myself, but the nightmares still continued occasionally. Kim announced in February 2023 that she was pregnant, and a range of mixed emotions came over me. From being overjoyed to starting all over again to crying out for the loss of what I once had. I was all over the place. Kim comforted me, and we fell asleep in each other's arms. A couple of days later, I proposed to her, and she was overjoyed. It felt like everything was finally moving to a point where I can have some semblance of peace with my life. We were set to be married, and all the preparations were in full swing for my wedding in mid-June this year. I got a call from an unknown number. When I picked it up, I could hear someone cry. I instantly recognized that voice. It was Amanda, the girl who my brother used to frame me, and I cut the call trying to hold back my anger. Kim was with me and saw my face and came over concerned. I was trying to hold back my mix of tears and anger and told her who it was when the call came in again. This time, Kim picked up the phone and put it on speaker. There was a guy on the other side, and he explained that he was Amanda's fiance, and she wanted to come clean over what she said back then. She got on the phone and kept apologizing over and over again and kept crying continuously. Kim did most of the talking as I became a sobbing mess, not sure what I wanted to do, so Kim said that they will call back. She immediately called Derek over, who listened to everything patiently as Kim explained what had happened then. He gave me a hug and invested that we should set up a meeting at a lawyer's place with her confession so that it could help out in case of any future possible issues. I called up my lawyer and explained everything to him. He said he'll set up a meeting in his office and gave me a time and date. I called Amanda and told her that she needs to come over to my lawyer's office and we'll discuss it there. 3 days later, we met up at his office. Amanda looked half dead with her expressions. Her fiancé was the only person who was with her. My lawyer set up the meeting with a camera to record the entire meeting. I asked him to mediate and I asked Kim to come with me. We sat across the room and she started to explain in detail what had happened back then. A lot of things were said and discussed, but here's the crux of it. She and my brother were dating back in 2015, but no one knew. He was the person behind the entire RP plan. She went along because she really loved him and would do anything for him. He got a new phone and stole my profile pic from my WhatsApp number back then, and they used it to create the fake screenshots by chatting back and forth with Amanda. I went from crying to filled with rage. I can honestly say that if it wasn't for Kim, I might have been been charged with assault. Kim was pretty furious and worked up as well, partially due to the pregnancy, and she tore Amanda a new one with her verbal lashes. Though my lawyer tried to maintain things civil, it was clear that Kim was pretty ticked off. She went further to tell her fiancé if he still marries this human garbage, then he deserves what's coming to him. Fighting back anger and tears, I asked them why are they coming out and telling it to me now. Her fiancé Mark came forward and explained. He said that they were pretty intoxicated a couple of weeks back, and she blurted out how she helped an ex destroy a marriage. That stuck with him, and after asking non-stop and pushing her, she finally came clean to him. It was then that he pushed her to own up to her mistakes if she wants peace in her life. Apparently, after she helped Henry, he started becoming cold and distant with her, and eventually broke off 6 months later. At that point, she felt terrible, but was too scared to come clean, and spent a lot of time in therapy trying to work through her issues. After everything was laid out on the table, my lawyer stepped in and said, let's take a 30-minute break and meet back again. Amanda and Mark stepped out, and our lawyer discussed that if I want, he can go after her and my brother for defamation. The evidence available is more than enough for me to do what I want. I was feeling a lot of rage, but I decided I didn't want this to spoil the wedding, and whatever I wanted to do would have to wait till after everything was done. I told Amanda that I will be in contact with her, but for now, I don't want her telling anyone else. I didn't want any drama from my ex-family to impact my wedding. After that meeting, Kim hugged me and told me that she was right in trusting her guts, and now she feels like a weight had lifted off her shoulders. I shared her sentiment. We had a small wedding with both James and Derek being the best man, and a 3-week-long honeymoon covering Europe. It was an amazing time for both of us. Thankfully, I was able to work through what I had heard, and Derek too suggested that I should put this on the back of my mind. It didn't spoil the honeymoon too much, though the nightmares were coming in more frequently than before during that time, and Kim was always there to support me. I also had a discussion with my therapist, who told me that I will need to confront my ex-family sooner or later, if not for anything else, then for closer. After thinking a lot about all that had happened, I decided to reach out to Amanda in July and told her what she needed to do. I told her that I will be taking legal action based on her statement, but if she wants to not be screwed financially, she needs to follow what I told her next. She needed to talk to Jenny alone and explain to her everything she told us back in the lawyer's office. She was crying while listening to me and told me that Mark left her. I told her that I wish I could feel sorry for her, but I don't, then stated that karma hits everyone hard. It hits her, and now it's coming for my brother. A couple of days later, I received a text. It was from my ex-wife Jenny. In spite of being blocked, I had been sending her birthday wishes and wishes on both our daughter's birthday, as well as holiday greetings over text. This was the first message I received in 8 years. She basically asked if we could talk. I didn't want to be alone when I was having this conversation, so I told her I will call her in a few hours. I reached home and was with my GF Kim when the call took place. I could immediately hear Jenny sobbing uncontrollably for a while before she told me how sorry she was and how terrible she is feeling currently. I was somehow able to maintain my composure all this time. I told her that it hurt terribly knowing that she thought so little of me that she so easily fell into my brother Henry's trap. I asked her about my girls. They said they are doing well, and then asked when did she meet Amanda. She said she met her 2 days ago. It took a lot of time to process how wrong she was, and quickly she moved away from me. She immediately brought it to the attention of my ex-parents, and they were just as stunned. They all wanted to contact me, but she said she wants to connect first and apologize. I told her what she had done was beyond hurtful. I asked what had happened to the golden child. She stated that he's been kicked out of the house. I chuckled a bit. She told me she had married Henry a year after the divorce was finalized, as he was the one who supported her through this, and suddenly it all made sense. Looks like he never gotten over her. She told me that. She has a daughter with him too. After the discussions, I basically told her what is going to happen and a detail of what I wanted. I want her to reach out to all my former extended family so that they are aware what a piece of crap he is. Secondly, I am only looking to co-parent only my 2 girls, and that I do not have any intention to reconcile with her beyond what it takes to me having a relationship with my daughters. And third, I will text her the date and time when I want to meet my ex-parents, and I want to meet them in person. After that, I just hugged Kim, knowing she was pregnant, and her mood would have been all over the place. I kept my emotions in check, but I guess she was crying for the both of us, and we fell asleep on the bed. When I woke up next morning, my phone was shut off, and when I put it on charge, I noticed the barrage of messages that were coming through. I had over 50 missed calls and hundreds of messages. I was also added to the family group message where every single one of them were apologizing. Over the next few days, I started getting messages from some of the friends who were apologizing for what had happened and how they jumped the gun on everything. The only reply I gave was to the family group that since I was disowned almost 8 years back, I was an outsider in this group and wished to remain so. Whether I forgive them or not would happen on my terms and my timeline and not theirs. I further told them not to add me back here and left the group. Some of the family members tried to call me out by messaging me that they were disappointed in my reaction, and I shut them down, saying they were not in a position to judge me after being so quick to assume what I did and to not contact me again unless I contact them first. A couple of weeks later, I called up Jenny and told her I want her to bring my girls over the weekend so I could meet them properly. Kim, being as adamant and feisty as she is, said she wants to meet her stepdaughters as well. We argued argued a lot. It was mostly me telling her that since she was pregnant she needs to take care of herself, but she was pretty adamant, so I gave in. We met at a public park. Jenny looked a bit disheveled, but looked like she put an effort to look as good as possible in this meeting. There I saw Alice and Sarah for the first time in 8 years. They had grown so much. The only memories I had of them were in my phone, as I was pretty much blocked from all the socials and everywhere else. Jenny came crying, trying to hug me, and I put both my hands up front to decline. I then introduced her to Kim as my wife, and she broke down a sobbing mess in the park. Kim came forward to comfort her, and we sat down in a place close by. I grabbed both my girls and cried out. My girls were never told about me until recently, and they were pretty conflicted as they only knew Henry as their father, but seeing me suddenly brought out some emotions. There was a lot of crying and talking. By the evening, we exchanged what had happened in our lives. She told me that she got married to Henry a year after that. He took care of her for the first few years. After that thing settled down, he still couldn't grow his landscaping business to a point where it's profitable, and then COVID basically forced him to shut shop. His parents were now dipping into their savings in an attempt to make ends meet, and he never bothered to start something again despite his parents telling him to. She said she's filing for divorce from Henry, and she can't stand the sight of him. I told her she's free to do what she wants, and it has nothing to do with me. I told her some details moving forward. Essentially, I wanted Alice and Sarah to attend family therapy sessions with me over going forward so we can heal. They've been robbed of their real father, and it was time to make it right, and I want to be a part of their lives. I also wanted them to be with me and Kim over the weekends, but I told her that would have to wait, as we had a kid of our own coming, and I want to put my full energy into that for now. Lastly, she said that my parents wanted to reach out to me. I corrected her and said they were anything but my parents. I still had the letter of disownment they sent out along with the divorce papers, and I had nothing to do with them, but both her and Kim stated that it would help me get closure from them, so I agreed. I told her that I would tell her when I want to meet them and where I want to meet them. I booked her a hotel and told her that I want her to be in this city for the night, and I want some more time with my girls, with tomorrow being Sunday. We spent that Sunday together as well, but this time I took them to the sights and around the city, and we really enjoyed the time we had. Before leaving, both of them gave me a warm hug, and I told them I will see them next week. I told her that she doesn't need to drive the girls for the family therapy sessions, and I will come over to them. I got good recommendations from my therapist, and we had a good first introductory session, but the therapist spelled it out that sooner or later they will need to know what my ex-brother did, and I told her they will in due time. She suggested I write it out here and get a few outside perspectives to my situation as well, which is what brings me to opening this forum to you. What should I do from here? I plan to confront my ex-parents sooner or later, and despite of me calling them their ex, I still have emotions and feelings for them. I'm not sure if that makes sense. How do I deal with Henry? I don't think I ever want to see his face ever again, but do I go after him and ruin him with a defamation suit, knowing fully well that he has a daughter from my ex as well, and anything I do to him might impact her? Any feedback is appreciated.